Hi folks, CodeTutor here and my name is Anil Deshpande. Welcome to another video on Android unit testing. In the previous video, we introduced the country service which allows us to fetch the data remotely from an API, and then we utilized this fetch all in country repositories get all method, and we even updated the country DAO to do the insertion into the local database. And now our get all function uses services fetch all to insert it into the local data source and return that particular value. But we ended up wondering what happens when our remote service crashes. In real world scenarios, because of various situations like slow network, API downtime, it is quite possible that this might actually fail. In that case, our application will crash, and we have to make sure that our application is resilient from those kind of scenarios. So let's slightly modify this. We will put this block of the code under try catch any exception. If you want to handle it slightly differently depending upon the kind of exception, you can do that, but I am right now keeping it fairly simple. And if there is an exception, then I am going to just return the local, and local might get initialized with empty list if there are no values locally in the data source. So we have just made it little bit more resilient than what it was earlier. Now that this is done, it is time to test our country repository with the service and DAO. And just like we created fake and stub DAO, we will now create fake and stub service. So under the doubles, I can introduce a class stub country service which extends country service. And what is a stub? It always returns the same values. So let me override fetch all, and this thing returns list of countries, and these are those countries, Japan and Canada. This is a stub, and in the same way I can create another class which is a fake. So let me create a fake country service. Fakes usually have little bit more logic than the stubs, so you probably want to send some seed value, list of country, initially empty list. So this should contain some kind of basic bare minimum logic. So I will create a private val backing is equal to seed dot to mutable list, and then let me override the function fetch all which returns the backing list. And if you want to add any new value to this particular backing list, you need a helping function, and let me add that function as well. So suspend function enqueue, which basically adds a country to the backing. So whatever this fake country service or stub country service, this is okay, but this doesn't really help you to test this scenario where exceptions are getting thrown. That is because in both stub and fake service we just created, we are just returning list of countries. However, to test exception scenario, we need a stub service which throws an exception. So let me create another Kotlin class. Let me call it as throwing service stub, and this extends once again country service, and inside when I override fetch all, I throw some kind of exception. Boom. So now that we have implemented the fakes, stubs, and throwing country service, it is time to test our repository which relies on this particular country service. So let me create another Kotlin class, country repository service fallback test, and here we need fake country DAO, country service, and country repository. You can actually just use country DAO. What it gets initialized with doesn't really matter as long as it is satisfying that particular interface. And then I will write before, that is function setup, and in this I set up everything. That is, I set up the fake country DAO, stub country service, and then initialize the repository with those fake country DAO and stub country service. And now I can write some test cases. And as is the case, you start by writing test annotation. Let me minimize this test, and then function. What do I want to test? Empty DAO triggers remote fetch and caches the result. That is the function. Let me put run blocking, and in the run blocking val result is equal to repo.getAll, and this repo is initialized with DAO and service, and fake country DAO is initially empty. And I can see that there are compilation errors in the fake DAO. Why is that? Let me check with country DAO. Yeah, I have forgotten to implement insert all function. So let me fix that first. Let me override insert all, and let's have another helping function which will be a clear function which clears the backing list. So that is about the fake. And what about the stub? Yeah, in stub also I need to add insert all. So let me add the overriding function insert. Let me slightly modify this because I need an instance of countries to add all. So let me create a private variable called countries, and here I can return countries, and then let me also have a helper clear. So that will take care of the problem that we were seeing in terms of the compilation error. Now let me go back. Initially, the entries in the DAO will be empty, and this stub service always returns these two values. Just always remember this. So here, get all will return a empty list, will initially be empty, and that is why it will fetch from the service. And there I want to assert equals service returns two values. So result dot size will be equal to 2, and I can just check the same thing against the DAO, and let me run this. Oh, there are other compilation errors. So as you can see here, there are some tests here, old tests which we had written with only country DAO, and we have not used the service. So let's fix that. Private late init var service is of type country service, and let's initialize the service with stub country service, and then pass that particular service here. So that is one, and there is another one probably which is parameterized one, and here also it doesn't have a service. So let us fix that. So private late init var service country service, and then if you come down here, yeah, let's initialize the service with stub country service, and then pass the service, and that will fix the compilation errors. Now let me go back here and run this. Yeah, as expected, initially the DAO is empty. That basically means the value that we are getting will be from the service. So in the same way, let us write a couple of more tests. Non-empty DAO should skip the service. So DAO initially will be empty. So let us do a insert all and pass one entry to that. So when I do a get all on repo, it should return me the recently inserted value from this. So let me run this. Yeah, as expected, that passes. And now let us test when the service fails. If you recall, we had implemented a throwing service stub which throws IO exception. We can use this to test out certain scenarios. So let me write a test. Let me minimize this function. So if the service fails, it should return me whatever that is there in the DAO. So to do that, let us first initialize the DAO, insert all, insert a single country here just for testing purpose, and then repo is equal to country repository, pass the same DAO but replace it with throwing service stub. I am reinitializing the repo instance that we have set up in the before function. That's fine, you can do that. And now let me check the result is equal to repo dot get all, and once again we are asserting that it should return me the fallback mechanism that is coming from the DAO. And once again, if I run this, it's working just fine. Let's minimize this. Let's go to the next test function. Let me write test function service failure falls back to DAO with pre-populated data. So what we can do is we can create a repo, we can reinitialize the repo, and after that we will pre-populate the data, and then once again we are doing the same thing. And if I test this, it should also work fine. Instead of running these test cases individually, what we can do is we can just run it here the whole class and it should work perfectly fine. You can even write the parameterized test cases so that you don't have to repeat certain things. We have already seen how to write parameterized test cases in the previous videos. You can see that we have a parameterized country repository test. So in this case, you are using run with parameterized class. You can apply the same to this particular class as well. So that's it. This is how you basically test your repository, which has now dependencies on two things, that is data access object and service. And to test that also, you once again created different kinds of fakes and stubs to simulate different kinds of scenarios in case of service. You created throwing service stub and you created stub country service, fake country service. The concept remains the same, just like we created the stub country DAO and fake country DAO. In the next video, we will move beyond this and start exploring some of the advanced concepts in unit testing of Android application. So stay tuned. That brings us to the end of this particular video. Don't forget to like, comment, share the video and subscribe to the channel. Take care. Bye.